questioning will be chosen by lot and will alternate between each question. This event is not time for each candidate to respond to our question. I'd like to introduce first Mr. Kelly. And you can choose.
So do you want us to both go up?
Yes, you can both go up.
Okay.
And Mr. Kelly will do the first question, and then we'll alternate back and forth. We have a timekeeper here. We want to limit these questions to 2-minute answers. We'll let them have an opening statement. And then we will follow it by questions from the residents. Where's Jan went?
Right here. Oh, you want me?
I knew there was someone missing. We asked the candidates to be respectful of the other candidate, to keep their responses to the time limit, which is 2 minutes each, and limit their responses to the question asked. And if there is time after the event, the candidates may stay if they wish and meet the residents. We're going to start with an opening statement by each candidate, and we'll let them speak for 2 minutes. Nouri, you're first. And when you speak, this is a unidirectional mic, so you have to speak right into the center of it.
All right, can folks hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Can the folks in the very back hear me? Great, okay. Well, first and foremost, I want to say thank you so much to the Sherwood Oaks community for having us come out today. I want to say thank you so much to Mr. Kelly for joining us here for this forum to talk about some of the most important issues that are facing our country. In 2024, we know where we are. We know how important it is for the future. We know that regardless of political party, things are rough, things need change, and we need an opportunity for the future so that we can all move forward together. For those who don't know me, I'm going to make sure that I know you by the end of this. My name is Preston Nouri. I'm first generation American, born here in Western Pennsylvania. My grandmother came here from Poland. She was actually in Auschwitz, and quite frankly, we've got Western Pennsylvania as our home. We've been here for about a generation now. We have a small business over out in Lawrence Park in Erie. I have worked at the Pentagon in legislative and congressional oversight. I've worked at the State Department in diplomatic security, and I've also worked on the Hill in the House of Representatives. And push comes to shove, I came back home to Western PA because I know that we need an opportunity for all folks to rise together. I've got friends and family in my community, and in particular, I'll tell you about a good friend of mine who works 65 hours a week as a carpenter, so he's out there working hard. He takes care of his mom, who's got some serious health challenges, and he takes care of his 5-year-old. With the cost of childcare, the cost of healthcare, and just the general circumstances that we have found ourselves in, he's unable to save for a home, unable to send his daughter to the school that she would like, and it comes down to our opportunities here in Western Pennsylvania have been stifled. My father worked at GE, he worked at Zurn, and with both of those companies leaving in the early 2000s, 2010s, he lost about 35,000 jobs in just Erie County alone. What it comes down to is all of Western Pennsylvania needs help, especially here in Cranberry, all the way up to Erie. I hope to be able to take advantage of my experience working and appropriating out $1.7 trillion at the Pentagon to make sure that money is coming back home for working families, for all folks, and making sure that we can drive down the cost of healthcare, making sure we can reduce inflation, and making sure we can directly tackle the issues that are impacting Americans up and down this district. And I really am looking forward to this fantastic forum, the lovely questions here, and I hope to be able to make sure that I can convince a few of you that I can have your vote here in November. Thank you so much.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes, thank you, Dan. Well, first of all, it's good to see you all, and I think that if you were to look at the last 12 years of my life, I've actually served the
this district. One of the things that we're very proud of is every year we get the Medicare Advantage Award for being a champion. I think we recognize it more than anything else. At my age right now, so a combination of the Kellys and the McTies got together and we ended up with a very large family. And every Sunday after Mass, we would be at my grandmother Kelly's. Whenever families were still together, we actually worked in the same areas and had a chance to not only worship together, but to celebrate life together. I'm very proud of the 12 years I've been in Congress. My whole life has been one of service. I come from the private sector. I would never have run for Congress if in 2010 I got a 39-page letter. The government had taken over General Motors and they wanted me to know that I would no longer have one of my franchises. They were going to cancel it. My choice at that time was to either accept that or go to court. Well, this is a business that my parents started in 1953. I thought at that time, thank God, my mother and my father were not alive to see what's happened to this country. I fought it, and I won, and I got to keep the franchise. At that moment, I understood that the longer we stay on the sidelines, and I'm talking about people from the private sector who have to make payday twice a month, who have to pay all their different taxes, who have to employ people, who have to buy product, who have to arrange financing for people, that it was incumbent upon me to stand up into that stiff wind and say, the government has no business in my business. I pay taxes. I pay wage taxes. We provide health care. We provide everything that's necessary for people once they retire. So my role in government is not one as somebody who's only been in government. If you haven't been on the field, you shouldn't be calling the plays. I'll tell you right now, the one thing that I am adamant about as we go forward, we know what's happened. We look at what's happened and we knew how much a dollar used to be worth, and we realize now that it's fractional. We realize that our debt far exceeds anything that we can ever get down to a level that makes sense. Only through strong leadership out of the private sector can we get this stuff right. And so I'm glad to be with you here today. I visited here many times, and I talked when I walked in. Mr. and Mrs. Yowie were here at the end of the time that I knew them, and we used to visit, and I was always impressed with just how great I am. I'm going to finish right now. I'm glad to be with you. I know we're on a clock all the time, but you know what else? This country's on a clock. If we don't get people from the private sector serving, you can't expect policy that serves private citizens. So thank you so much. I'm so glad to be with you today.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. To start, just want to make one comment. Pennsylvania has one of the highest rates of residents over age 65. And of course, Sherwood Oaks has a very high rate of residents over age 65. So the first question should not be surprising. Jan?
Thank you. To the candidates, how will you ensure that Social Security and Medicare benefits are guaranteed for present and future retirees? And are you in favor of an increase in Social Security benefits?
Mr. Kelly goes first.
Yeah, sure. I can go first on that. Listen, I'm 76. My whole life has been in the private sector. Back in the early 70s, we decided we should have a retirement program for the people that work at Kelly Automotive. We put that into effect then. Nobody is more acutely aware of where our seniors are today than I am, because I am you. I've spent my whole life making sure that all the wage taxes that were going in were appropriate, and they were going into Social Security. I would just say right now, with the rising cost, the inflation on everything, it's made it incumbent upon us to take a look at how is it we can increase those payments, taking into effect the cost phases that take place that are not recognized right now as part of the equation. We have to look at that. The other thing is, so who is it that makes this possible? Working people. They're called wage taxes. That's what affects Social Security. We need more people working. We need more people putting money into that, and we need to ensure that the next generation doesn't look at Social Security as a failing model that they'll never be able to participate in, but they're willing to go ahead and donate to right now. So Social Security is a big issue. The biggest issue I think we have is the point at we look at what we're spending now, and it's not that we're not spending enough. I just don't think we're spending it properly. We can adjust those things, we can move forward. By the way, on Ways and Means, that's part of what I am on the tax subcommittee. Those are one of the things we look at. So I do that every single day. It's not a myth to me, it is part of who I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nouri, the same question.
Thank you so much.
Did you want to hear the question again?
If you could, please, that'd be great.
How will you ensure that Social Security and Medicare benefits are guaranteed for present and future retirees? And are you in favor of an increase in benefit?
So I'm going to tackle this question head on. And first and foremost here, in terms of am I in favor of increasing Social Security benefits, I wholeheartedly am. And to make sure that we increase our benefits for Social Security, we need to make sure that this program moving forward has the ability to pay for itself moving forward. As somebody who is paying into Social Security, I really genuinely pray every day that I'll be able to see that result. I want to be able to make that investment, not a donation, but an investment into my future, an investment into my child's future, an investment into my wife's future, an investment that I want to make sure that every single person currently on Social Security and Medicare have access to, but also the next generation. People older than me, my age, and younger have access to it. And right now, me and Mr. Kelly differ in the way that we believe we can make that accessible. Him and the Republican Study Committee have declared that we are looking for $5.5 trillion in tax breaks that would essentially raise the age of Social Security, privatize Medicare, deny people pre-existing conditions. And those don't sound like the benefit increases that folks who are on Social Security and Medicare need. They need to have medications capped at a price. They need the costs that a lot of folks are living on fixed incomes with, making sure that drug prices are fixed, making sure that the cost of living isn't too terribly expensive. And me and Mr. Kelly completely agree that the dollar is a fraction of what it was previously. And when it comes down to it is we need to make sure that every single dollar that we invest is invested in a proper way. Not $5.5 trillion in tax cuts that benefit the 1%, but also tax breaks that are going to make sure that we can help working families, folks on fixed income, and not taking away from the Social Security and Medicare benefits that so many people up and down this district and across this entire nation rely on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nouri. The next question concerns an issue that too often is the lead story on the TV news every day. Janie.
There's much discussion concerning gun safety laws. What policies would you support to reduce gun violence?
So I want to first and foremost address something that is a sad fact that I've seen about Democrats. They believe that all Democrats are out here to take guns and try to make sure that we're not able to truly feel the full embodiment of what the Second Amendment is. I want to first put that to bed right now and by saying I personally am a gun owner. I hunt, I fish, I hunt for turkey, I hunt for deer, I fish steelhead. And if you guys get a chance to head up to Erie, it's fantastic. But what it comes down to in relation to gun violence and things we see on the TV consistently, we need common sense gun laws, background checks, making sure that folks who have access to guns and real responsible gun owners don't have their rights infringed upon, but making sure that bad actors and the bad folks that we see out there or people who have mental health crises are able to make sure that there's some distance, there's some time, there's common sense laws to make sure that we can't see headline after headline where so many lives are cut short. As somebody who's thinking about having kids here, I'm genuinely concerned about whether or not my son or daughter is gonna go out there and be a statistic. And I can't let that be the reality here. And a number of folks here have grandkids, kids, that it's concerned for. And I wanna make sure that I have the commitment to you, my fellow gun owners, that I'm here to make sure that your rights are represented, but also make sure that common sense laws that are gonna make sure that those headlines become a thing of the past are what our way future is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, well, I do agree with Mr. Nouri on almost everything he said. I happen to be the father of 4 and the grandfather of 10. My oldest grandchild right now is in his second year at West Point. His father was a graduate of West Point. My entire family has served in the military. I'm a hunter. I lived on a farm growing up, 148 acres. One of the things I learned very early in life when my father, we got reached 12 years old and we were able to go hunting, was the first thing was, wherever it is that you hunt, you go to that door first, you knock on that door, and you ask that gentleman or the gentlelady permission to hunt on their land. I think when we talk about gun safety, that's a critical issue, but then when we talk about other issues, almost every single incident we look at is a result of somebody obtaining not a gun legally, but illegally, and somebody who has deep mental health problems. Normal people don't do what these folks are doing. I've watched on July 13th at Butler, an assassination attempt, another one down in Florida not too long ago. And you look at that, I don't know that these people, when you look at them and say they shouldn't have a gun, there are ways. You should have to go through safety council. From the time I was a child growing up, it was always respect private property, do everything you're supposed to do, get gun safety laws, put them into place. But the number one problem we face today, and I think you all know this, we used to have places where we could put people and institutionalize them and try to make sure they were under some type of supervision or guidance. Everything that we've seen taking place so far has been somebody, especially these horrific things, it's been a result of somebody who had mentally ill that went off on some type of a different tangent that we can't even imagine ourselves. Gun safety, yes. Gun laws, yes. The ability to own guns, that's part of our Second Amendment. We cannot destroy that. I will defend that to the very end, and I think we both agree on that. The question is, how do you fix it? And I think it's a much greater problem than we realize, and a lot of it has to do with the rate of mental health that we're looking at in our country right now, and people who are not stable.
Thank you. Next question concerns something that's not very nice in our country, and that's hate crimes. They occur at a terrible rate in our country against various groups. And Rosemary has a question about one of those groups.
It's, you could just say yes or no. Do you support equality and protections for the LGBTQ community, and why or why not?
Kelly?
Well, I don't know why you wouldn't. Why would you not? They're citizens the same as all of us are. When you look at what we have, and we're the only place in the world that has a constitution like this and has the amendments to our constitution that protects the rights of every single citizen. I don't care how they identify. They're citizens, they have the same rights as everybody else, and I think we've become too polarized in this country. Everybody has their issue, and then there's somebody else that has another issue. We can no longer talk to each other, we scream at each other. That further polarizes the situation. At the end of that, we walk away thinking, I don't believe a thing that he said, and I don't think what she said, and I don't know that they believe what I said. This is not the country that I was raised in. The culture that I grew up in is gone. We used to go to Mass after Sunday at my grandmother Kelly's house or my grandfather Matthi's house. We came together as families. That's not the culture we live in anymore. And I sit back, and when I talk to my friends, I always think to myself, what happened? What weren't we aware of? What was taking place that we were too busy doing something else and we didn't realize how polarized we become? There's no other place in the world. This is the only country I know that's putting up fences to keep people out. You can come into the United States, but if your first entry into the United States is breaking one of their laws, that's not a good way to start. We need to realize we all have the same rights. We're all protected under the same Constitution. There is no reason in my mind why we can't sit down and have just regular conversations about what's going on and what we agree on. I think we agree on almost everything. You can't take an oath of office because you pledge that you're going to follow that Constitution and then go off in some other direction. That's not the way it works. That's not the way I was raised in the family. That's not the culture I grew up in. Somehow, we have to come together again. And I think most of you have grandchildren. And you look at what's happened, and you got to say, my gosh, what happened? What happened? What didn't I see? I will tell you this. At our last high school reunion, we sat around a table, and I said to my friends, I said, do you realize how lucky we were to grow up with the parents we had, the preachers we had, the teachers we had, the butler that we grew up in? How lucky were we? Everybody said we were, except for one girl. I said, Linda, so you don't think we were lucky? She says, I don't think we were lucky at all. I said, well then, what would you say we were? She said, we were blessed. I will never again in my life say I was lucky through the grace of God through a strong family, I was able to actually grow up in the United States that we all know and love, that 1.5 million men and women in uniform have died to protect. That is our solemn oath. That's the pledge I take. I have done that for 12 years. This isn't an imaginary thing for me. I've actually done it. I'm on the ground. I'm working on legislation that protects all of us, all according to what our Constitution says and what our 10 amendments say. That's the basis of who we are. Thank you.
Nouri, do you want to have the question repeated?
I think I remember. Also, Rosemary, my mom's name is Rosemary. I will say, let me tell you, it's fantastic. A little bit better here? All right. I'm just going to go outright and say yes, I wholeheartedly support rights and equality for folks who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, and trying to make sure that people, regardless of how they identify, regardless of race, religion, or creed, as we have initially and so wholeheartedly said as Americans, everyone is equal. Everyone has the rights and responsibilities. As somebody who has a variety of friends, folks who identify one way or the other, people who are of different races and religions here, it allows me to really see what our opportunity here is. I always called it the Great American Melting Pot, but the thing is, I'm not sure if I think that's truly the way that it is. It's the American melting pot, we're all burning in the pot. It's a melting pot, but we're the Great American Mosaic. Every single person, one might seem unique and individual, but once we all come together as a mosaic does, with each individual piece of such a beautiful larger picture, we can truly realize the values that this Constitution has proclaimed, making sure that folks don't consistently fear one way or the other. And even, especially outside of the LGBTQ group, there's other marginalized communities who are looking for equity across this country, and trying to make sure that we have the same values, same opportunities, same access, and making sure that our rhetoric, the words that we use to describe people who are different than us, are not different than the words that we use to describe ourselves. Every single person in this country deserves the opportunity to make sure that if we don't have vague platitudes on making sure that people actually care about folks, but making sure that it's backed up with policy, backed up with action, and backed up with real results that people, like my friends and family, can actually tangibly feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nouri. The next question will be starting with Mr. Nouri. There are many issues that divide Americans drastically. And Jan has a question that she would like to ask about that.
What policies do you support concerning abortion?
So in relation to abortion, I'm going to tell you guys a story about me. My mom, about 15 years ago, called me on the phone when I was still in school, gave me a shout and said, "Hey, I'm pregnant. You're going to have a little brother." I'm an only child. It was one of the happiest moments in my entire life to actually know that I could have somebody with me alongside this whole journey here, moving forward, that we call life. But what comes down to it is about 3 weeks later, she called me and said, "Son, I've got something to say to you." She's a devout Catholic woman. Her mom, also a devout Polish Catholic woman, said to me, "I need to get an abortion because I have an ectopic pregnancy, and if I continue along right now, I will die." That was tough for a young person to hear. To know that something that she held so near and dear to her heart now jeopardized her life. And where it comes down to is we've seen legislation that a variety of people have put forward, including Mr. Kelly, would create a circumstance in the future in which my mom would be criminalized. I wholeheartedly believe that we need to make sure that life is preserved. We need to make sure that the future of people is not determined by policy one way or the other here. But in her case, if we continue to go down the path that we're going, we will find a future where more and more women, especially ones that we all know and love, are put in circumstances where they very well may be criminalized for life-saving procedures. I can't create a future where I'm scared about whether or not my daughter, my wife, my cousins have an opportunity where they might find themselves criminalized because they needed their life saved. When it comes to making sure that healthcare decisions are protected. I will make sure that big government stays out of the doctor room, because the only place in there that has any kind of room is for that woman, that doctor, to make that decision. Thank you.
Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think for Mr. Nouri, at his young age, he would not have gone through what I've gone through as a 76-year-old. My wife and I we have 4 children. She was pregnant with our second child, and it was an ectopic pregnancy. So I don't just talk about an ectopic pregnancy as this would be the excuse why you would do this. And we sat down with her doctors, and the doctor was explaining to me what was taking place and with the fallopian tubes. And this is not just a talking point for me, by the way. This is an actual going through it on a daily life and raising 4 children and having 10 grandchildren. So it's not a political talking point. First of all, Mr. Kelly has never proposed anything like you're talking about. The only thing that took place in Roe versus Wade is that the government said all 50 states have the ability to decide for themselves on this issue, not a one-time everything covered under this. I think you're missing a very important point about that. You talk very much about ectopic pregnancy. I'm the father of a child that did not reach full majority because of an ectopic pregnancy, so nobody needs to lecture me on that. I've been through it. I have 10 grandchildren. I've watched some of the things that my daughters-in-law have gone through. So it's not a talking point. It's an actuality. I am so fed up with people talking about Republicans taking away women's rights. That is not a true statement. The only thing that we proposed was that it needs to go out of Roe versus Wade and go into the states. Why would we not say to each state, you, members of whatever state, you can make these decisions when it comes to these issues? Not a one-size-fits-all. Now, I'm very pro-life. I'm one of 5. My wife's one of 9. My Uncle Jerry and Aunt Joanne had 13. That's McTie's fruit stand, as you're going into Pittsburgh. When is it that we got to the point where this has become the main issue in a political debate? The right to life, the right for people to make that decision by themselves in their own state with their own legislators. We've taken that away and said, oh no, there's a one-size-fits-all. That's not true. It's a falsehood. I wish we'd do some fact checking on this. I am so fed up with people telling me what took place. I said, that's not what took place at all. The rights were given to the states to individually decide what should be the policy for their state. That's a big difference as to saying one party took that away from you. I'm a right-to-life person. I want to see every single child who's conceived have an opportunity to enjoy life. I know it's not the right time for some people. That's why I'm a big sponsor of the adoption option. In our family, there's 6 children that are adopted children. I have no idea when we get together whether they were adopted or not. It is one big family. This is some issue that is very disturbing because it's become a political issue that doesn't need to be a political issue. The states have been given the rights right now to determine by themselves what is right for their state. Who can interact with them? The citizens of that state talking with their legislators. It is so American. A one-size-fits-all is not appropriate. Ectopic pregnancy, Mr. Nouri, I know about ectopic pregnancy. I'm the father of a child that was part of an ectopic pregnancy. So it's not a talking point for me, it's an actuality. My wife still believes. Sometimes I wake up in the morning, she says, I still have a chance to talk to him or her. And I said, honey, I'm so glad you feel comfortable with that. We are blessed with 4 children, 10 grandchildren. I wake up every day with one thing in mind and one thing only, and that is, what can I do to make their life easier? So when it comes to right to life, I am right to life. I'm also, the adoption option is there. If somebody makes a decision in another state to do what they want, that's that state's decision, it's not mine.
Thank you. The next question will start with Mr. Kelly. Jamie.
Was the result of the 2020 presidential election fair? Why or why not?
If you want to know, I objected to that, to the election. And why did I object to it? I objected to it because the state of Pennsylvania, in order to change the voting laws, should have had an amendment to our Constitution. The legislature decided on its own to make a decision. My pushback on it was it had to go through the amendment process. Isn't that who we are? And then people tell me, well, you failed. You put that up, but you lost. I said, it's worse than that. The courts wouldn't hear the case. I've lived long enough to understand that there's a process that you must go through. And when that process is violated, you need to stand up and say, this isn't the right policy. This is defying everything we are as Americans. So my objection was that Pennsylvania went outside its own constitution and changed the voting laws. My objection wasn't to the outcome. My objection was the fact that you changed. You should have done an amendment to your constitution. If you had done that, there's no question about it. The fact that you didn't do it raises a big question. So if we're going to go outside the law when something's convenient for us, that's not the reason for laws. You don't get to do things of convenience. There's a process to go through. That process was violated in 2020 in the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania went outside its own constitution to change voting laws. That's not the way we were structured. None of us as citizens should say, you know what, maybe that was the right thing for that right time. It may be, but there's a process you go through. That was violated. That's a violation of our own constitution. That should bother everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Nouri?
I hear the question one more time. I want to make sure I answer everybody.
Was the result of the 2020 presidential election fair? Why or why not?
So in relation to the 2020 presidential election, there's, sadly, the transition of power has become politicized in our country. We've become such a polarized nation that we physically cannot even have a presidential election where we have people trying to say one way or the other that it was rigged, it was lost, people won when they shouldn't have won. I just 2 days ago met with folks up and down Erie County who are election protection specialists. The layered process by which so many people, who are all volunteers by the way, who genuinely believe in the future of this nation and care about the opportunities that come out of the process, that come out of our peaceful transition of power, volunteer their time to make sure that the election is fair, to make sure there isn't any rigging, to make sure there isn't something that people missed. There's been a tremendous amount of speculation. Nothing has been substantiated. We're 4 years later here in 2024 talking about the 2020 election because of the hubbub that has happened. In relation to Pennsylvania certification, I wholeheartedly, definitely, and I underscore Mr. Kelly's ability to raise real questions here. But after the vote had happened, and whenever people were continuing on to certify this election, he voted against certifying it and then voted to throw out my ballot as I was working at the Pentagon briefing one of the undersecretaries at the time and voted by mail from Erie, tried to throw out my mother's vote and 300,000 people in this district. What it comes down to is we can all have a conversation about making sure elections are protected, making sure they're secure, and I'm wholeheartedly ecstatic to hear that this moment has created so many more politically aware people who care about the opportunities, who care about making sure that our elections are secure. But what it comes down to is making sure that as soon as we've done all the investigations and looked into it and found out that there wasn't any corruption, that we need to make sure we stand by it. Not stand by it, not stand by it and afterwards, not try to say anything else about it, but understand that as George Washington did as handing over his presidency in the peaceful transition of power, that we must have that as the reality, regardless of political party, to make sure that the American democracy can continue to exist.
Ed, but this, what
Thank
question
you,
is?
Mr. Nouri.
So we have a constitution
Can I have
for a
a
reason.
debate?
No, this isn't right. This
Can I
isn't
have a
right.
debate?
No. You asked me to come here today, and I've come here today. You just asked me a question about the last election in 2020. My lawsuit was that Pennsylvania went outside its own constitution and did not follow the Constitution. That's what my objection was. My objection wasn't the outcome of the election. My objection was how the election was run that time, and I don't know if Mr. Nouri has studied Pennsylvania Constitution, but you would know that voting laws cannot be changed on a whim. It goes through a very measured process. That was not done. I understand where your position is on that, because yes, do I agree at the end? What was the final result? I've worked with the Biden administration, so that point has passed. My question from the beginning, if we have a constitution, but we only decide it's relevant when we want it to be relevant, do we have no constitution? We have no laws.
Please, sir, your time.
No, I appreciate it, Dan, but you invited me here today. I can't sit here and listen to an opinion that is not factual.
Please, sir, the state Supreme Court did not agree with you. Is
They
that
didn't
not
even
true?
hear, they
Is
did,
that not
the
true?
Supreme Court of the
state-
United States refused to hear the case. You know that, right?
Yes.
Do you know that?
Yes.
Okay, well, you know that then. Okay, so that's what the final decision should have come from. It did not come from the Supreme Court.
They upheld the state Supreme Court. Let's not get into an argument. The next question is concerning foreign affairs. Rosemary, it goes to Mr. Nouri.
Okay, this is a simple question with a complicated answer. And it is, what is your position on the Ukraine-Russia conflict?
Well, that is a simple question with a real long answer there. I'll tell you what, we're talking about NATO and geopolitics and everything, but push comes to shove, I've got two things in particular that I want to highlight. FEMA a few days ago just announced that they are $9 billion short of where they need to be for the disaster relief after the absolutely devastating hurricane that ravaged the southeast, western North Carolina, and in a lot of places in Appalachia. And as we sit here in Appalachia, that's the first thing I'm thinking about when people are asking me, oh, do we want to send $100 billion overseas for war? I wholeheartedly believe in Ukraine's ability to defend itself against the Russian invasion. We have done as an ally to stand up and protect them. We have sent aid and appropriations to make sure as such. However, we're not taking care of folks at home. I've got people in my community working 65 hours a week and not making ends meet. And when it comes down to where I hear that people in very similar communities to this, I was just on my way down here listening to the radio and some of the devastation coming out of western North Carolina. And there are communities where there's no electricity, no water, no food, no opportunity for a long-term future at this point secured. And what it comes down to is I want to make sure that our taxpayer dollars that I pay in, that every single person here in this room pays into, are spent to benefit first and foremost the American people. And as soon as we've gotten everyone taken care of, well, absolutely, let's make sure that we go protect our allies across the entire world.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Okay, no, I think.
The question was concerning.
Yeah, no, I understand the question.
Ukraine-Russia conflict.
I've always been the belief that charity begins at home. We're always so willing to go someplace else in the world, and I'm not saying we're wrong for doing that. But when we have unfunded necessities right here in the United States, I would like to say to our friends who are part of NATO, when do you start weighing in? When do you pay your fair share? Why is it always the Yanks? We are always the first ones to respond to anything that goes wrong in the world. And yet when something happens back here, I don't know that the rest of the world has weighed in and said, gosh, what a horrible thing that you all just went through. Let us come and help. I believe that American taxpayer dollars should be first spent on American issues. We are going to help whoever we can help with what they're facing in the rest of the world. The rest of the world is a tinderbox right now. I would like to have seen NATO, and President Trump said very early on that NATO needs to start, the member countries need to start funding it and not quit expecting the United States to pick up the lion's share. We have no problem helping anybody anywhere as long as we see we're not the only ones that show up. And I repeat what I've said, I have never seen another country come to the aid of America when America is going through a horrible time period, some kind of a natural disaster. We're always the first responder. It's always America. Look, it's American tax dollars. Our responsibility is to our American citizens to fulfill all the needs that they have. After that, we'll be willing to help out. But I want the rest of the world to help out. I want NATO to help out in these issues, not to pay a fraction. I want them to pay their full share the way we pay our full share. We put our wealth and we put our own men and women in jeopardy to take care of people around the world. And that's okay, because we've always been that way. Charity begins at home. All the American dollars that are spent are put there by Americans. It's not the government that has the money, it is American taxpayer money. Let's make sure that we take care of our own first, and then what we have left over, we all do it right now. We give to a lot of different charities, but you have to take care of your own responsibilities first.
Thank you. I know the time is short here, so I want to take one question as our final question before you do your final closing statements. The most recent immigration reform law was passed in 1986 under President Reagan. This law legalized 2.7 million undocumented residents who entered the United States before 1982. What immigration reforms do you support today, Mr. Kelly?
Well, under President Trump, one of his main issues, and when he first ran for office, people said, I don't know why he's worried about immigration. We do know now why he's worried about immigration. We realize that the dangerous points are not just our southwestern border. I also have an initiative for our northern border. 5,500 miles of border, the longest continuous border of any two countries in the world is our northern border. It is totally unchecked right now. We have put a heavy burden on our border control people. You can come into America, come in the right way. If breaking one of her laws is the way you gain entry, we have no idea how many people are in this country right now illegally. We have no idea where they're stationed. We have no idea what communities they're in. Laws are there for a reason. Anybody that serves in a public office takes an oath. The oath is to the United States of America. When you have open borders that we have had for the last 3.5 years, the numbers are unimaginable. We have no idea who these people are, where these people are living, what benefits they are taking, how are we funding these with hardworking American tax dollars to make sure they're okay, and somehow turning a blind eye and a deaf ear to our own citizens. It just doesn't make sense. I'm in favor of people coming to America. My relatives came to America. Mr. Nouri's relatives came to America. But they came through the right way. They came through the right way. If your first action upon entering the United States is to break our laws, that's not a very good look into the future, is how you will participate. We take care of people all over the world. Our first obligation to is our own citizens. This opening of our borders with an uncontrolled amount of people coming in, we don't know. Millions have come in. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they are. We know that a lot of them are murderers and they have been through some serious things. We know this. This is not me making up stuff. That is actual facts. They came in here, they didn't come through the right way. We don't know who they are. My first obligation, the oath I take, is to the people of the United States.
Mr. Nouri?
Thank you.
Did you want me to repeat it?
If you could, I want to make sure I answer it.
The most recent immigration reform law was passed in 1986 under President Reagan. This law legalized 2.7 million undocumented residents who entered the United States before 1982. What immigration reforms do you support today?
Well, we had a bipartisan deal made on immigration that was crafted by an incredibly conservative senator from Oklahoma. A number of people on this bipartisan communal all got together and said, you know what? This might be a concession for some Democrats, but push comes to shove. We see the disaster that is going on at the southern border. Regardless of however people would like to say it, my position will always be and shall be that we need to secure our border and making sure that folks are coming in the right way. I think every single person in here is either the child or grandchild of immigrants in some way, unless folks are native here. And what it comes down to is making sure that we address the issues. And we had a package that was ready to address the issues. But it was tanked because it became a political problem. We made immigration, abortion, and other key issues political props here in the 2024 election. And what it comes down to is immigration needs to be addressed because, as the Statue of Liberty so eloquently put, give me your tired and your poor from your warsome shores, When we come here to the United States, the land of the free and the home of the brave, we want to make sure that the people here who are contributing to this community, who are paying income taxes, the people who are involved in making sure that this future is real, is accessible for everybody. And when we got to deal with the problem, we put together a package just like Congress ought to, but we didn't pass it because some people in a coalition on either side of the party want to make it a political issue instead of addressing the problems that we have. Simply put, Congress is supposed to come together to solve the biggest issues that this country faces. And we did that with this immigration package, and we did not pass it because we have platitudes from various members, whether it be the Congress, Senate, President, trying to say that it's a problem. We all know it's a problem. We had a package. We needed to do it. And if you're interested in what kind of measures I'd be interested in supporting, similar measures that directly address the problem that we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, it's time for a 1-minute closing statement. Mr. Nouri.
Well, I want to say thank you again so much to the Sherwood Oaks community for having us. I want to also say thank you again, Mr. Kelly, for coming here. I mean, genuinely, when we have an opportunity like this with folks, to be able to share about the issues that are truly important for people in our electorate, it's an incredible thing. It's an incredible opportunity to come to people regardless of wherever folks come from, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of religion, regardless of anything, that we all know we're Americans. We all live here in this nation. Our kids go to the same schools. We all go to the same hospitals. We all need to make sure that what we are trying to create is a future for everybody. I plan to do the work to forge a better future for everybody, regardless of political party, regardless of who they are, regardless of age, and making sure that working folks have a friend in Washington, D.C. And I will ask for your vote here today, and I will also ask for your vote whether you vote by mail, whether you vote early, or whether you vote in person on November 5th, just as I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. And it's, thank you for,
Mr. Kelly.
okay, well, thank you for having us.
Closing statement.
I think one of the things that is, I say with Mr. Nouri, and I appreciated being here today, the difference between the two of us is I've actually lived this life. And it's great. I wish I was 24, 25 again, but I'm not. I'm 76. I have spent my entire life in this community. I ran for Congress because in 2010, the government took one of our franchises away. And I had to go to court to keep my own franchise. I realized at that time, I was missing out on something, and that was citizens' participation in the government. I ran as a representative. For 12 years, I have represented this district. I think if you look at my voting record, you're gonna say, you know what, he voted his district. If you look at what it is that I proposed from the beginning, is that I am going to represent not just Republicans, not just Democrats, but people who live in Pennsylvania's 16th congressional district. That is the effort I have. I am, by the way, a consistent champion of Medicare Advantage. Why? Because I recognize the needs of our seniors. I recognize that if it weren't for you, none of this next generation would have a country to even live in. We have been an incredible group of people. We have an incredible form of government, but it requires us being involved in it, not casually, not from election to election, but as time goes on. What is working, what is not working? I will just say today, the greatest challenge most of us have is a rising cost, the inflation that has taken place, our reliance on other people to provide energy for us when we can do it ourselves. The greatest thing we can do is bring more jobs back home, let our people make stuff that we're relying on other places in the world for. Let's make sure that we unite first as Americans, and then secondly, let's understand what the true issues are. It is up to you to make that decision, not me. I spent the last 12 years of my life representing this district. I hope you understand why I run, why I'm still running, and what I can continue to bring to the table. It takes a long time to get to a position where you can actually weigh in on policies. These are not Republican policies or Democrat policies for me. They're American policies. We have differences of opinion, and that's good. We should be able to debate them, and we do debate them. So, first of all, thank you for allowing me to be here. I have to run now because I'm going to Butler. We have another event this Saturday, and I'm on something called the task force to make sure that what happened on the 13th of July that we've done everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen again, or at least to the best of our ability, okay? And thank you all so much for the part that you have played in your lives, being part of the greatest experiment in the world of self-government. It is here in the United States. It is our responsibility to make sure it's available to the next generation. Thanks so much. God bless you all, and thank you for having us
Thank you,
here
Mr.
today.
Kelly. I'd like to applaud the candidates. And if they wish to stay and mingle, they are free to do so. Thank you very much.
I'll stick around.